dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast, courtesy of the Radio American Network, from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I am, as always, your host, Mark Angelides. Now, as far as the news stories that have dominated the week, initially we saw President Trump lay down the law at the United Nations, calling out all the member states over the so-called green energy agenda, the mass uncontrolled immigration that has so beset Western nations, and all this amid the backdrop of three prominent nations, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom, all declaring that they want to recognize an as of yet undefined Palestinian state. And while these geopolitical happenings should be top of each news hour, what was it that really dominated? Yes, you've guessed it, it was Jimmy Kimmel and his on-again, off-again relationship with ABC Disney. After being suspended indefinitely, allegedly under pressure from the FCC, Jimmy Kimmel is back on the airwaves, albeit a little more contrite and to a slightly smaller audience. And yet, something sticks out, and that's that the legacy media is still pushing the idea that Donald Trump and Brendan Carr of the FCC is behind the whole thing, and not, in fact, the affiliates who've refused to bring back the late night show host to their waiting audiences. So for now, he's back in roughly 75% of the markets. But hot on the heels of that is a new piece of proposed legislation spearheaded by certain Democrats in Congress that promises to reinforce the First Amendment. But the question is, will more words create less clarity? We're going to examine all that and a whole lot more on today's show. Now, please remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com. You can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're here on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and we're very fortunate to have with us today Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, Mr. James Fite. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Nice to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So Jim covers everything on LibertyNation.com, of a congressional bent, a constitutional bent. He's a wealth of knowledge in how the processes work and don't work through the halls of power. And there's a particular bill that upcoming bill that I want to discuss today, Jim, and that is the Nope Act. I enjoy it as much for its brevity of name as I do for anything else, but the Nope Act, that's N-O-P-E, give us an overview, Jim. What is it?
Well, yeah, I love the name too. It's so the Nope Act is not an actual bill that we have a text for yet. I mean, they haven't actually introduced it, so there's a lot of potential here. But the long form of the name is the No Political Enemies Act, which that sounds good. That sounds benign.
Yep.
As these often do. And so the argument that they're making here, this is a primarily Democrat-backed bill. Allegedly will be introduced by Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut and Jason Crow from Colorado in the House. And but so this is kind of a backlash to the firing of Jimmy Kimmel is what it really is. And so their idea is to extend the safeguards of free speech to media outlets and other organizations, so that they're protected as well as individuals, and to keep any president, they say, Republican or Democrat, to keep any presidential administration from which we'll see, but to keep them from being able to target and weaponize the any branch of the executive government, like weaponizing the DOJ and the FBI, which sounds oddly familiar, doesn't it?
It does indeed. So the funny thing is that now I've really, really dug into this. Now I don't have, as they say, I don't have a dog in this fight, and this is not a dog fighting show either, for that matter, because I love dogs. But I've dug so deeply into this Jimmy Kimmel situation that they're basing this proposed legislation on, and I don't see any way in which government can make a difference in this, nor can I see a way why it should. Because so, I'll walk everybody through this. I know, Jim, you've read my stuff.
We're gonna peel back the layers.
We're gonna peel back the layers and get a big old onion in there. It's the onion, sir. No, the Full Metal Jacket quote. Anyway, so what happened here was you had Jimmy Kimmel go off on a monologue saying that MAGA Republicans tried to cover up the fact that the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk was not one of their own. Okay.
Kind of. I mean, I could see you making the argument that he didn't say necessarily that they're saying he was, or that he wasn't necessarily saying that he was a MAGA person. That he was just.
It depends what the definition of is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Look, that's the feel you get. But I mean, his exact wording, I guess there's a little wiggle room.
So what happened was after that first, I don't know, denunciation of the MAGA extremists, as he sees them. Next Star, which is the broadcaster that carries ABC shows across a range of geographic areas, they said that, hey, this is not conducive. This kind of stuff is not conducive to what we want spread out to our diverse range of audience. And apparently also Sinclair, which also does these things, had the same words for ABC. And then, as we found out later, apparently Jimmy Kimmel was going to double down on it and refuse to on his next broadcast. But anyway, Next Star said that they would not be willing to carry that show anymore, which would affect, obviously, their advertising, their bottom line, that phrase.
Oh, for sure. That's dozens of networks, by the way.
Dozens of networks. I mean, I think if you count up Next Star and Sinclair, you're probably talking 30 to 30-ish% of every penny they get is going to be through those markets. And so, Jimmy Kimmel, whose ratings were worse than Stephen Colbert already, and Stephen Colbert was losing his network $40 million a year, as we found out, they decided to get rid of him. Now, where does the government come into it? Sorry, long story too short here, right? Or too long for the short story. Brendan Carr, chair of the FCC, he put out a warning to ABC, saying basically they've got to do something. Now, why would he do that? Would he do that because he loves the president so much? And he thought, hey, somebody's insulting people that are tangential to the president. Well, no. And so I dug really far into this. And so there's so the FCC was created in 1934 under FDR, right? And it's got a series of rules that have certainly been amended over time. I think it was an outgrowth of the radio communications. I guess that'd be an agency under it, but then it became the FCC. And so they have, if somebody on one of their broadcast channels, now people obviously criticize it, like they say, well, why aren't we getting the same treatment for Fox News? Why aren't we getting the same thing for CNN? Well, they're not broadcast, right? They're cable. And so what they have for broadcast is, if there's a crime or a catastrophe, now this is paraphrasing, but if there's a crime or a catastrophe, you're not allowed to give false information about a crime or catastrophe.
If this is the hoax rule. Yeah.
Yes. If it could result in public harm. Public harm's the key word there. Now that's debated over in courts all the time, public harm. But that's the first part. So if it does qualify that, if there is, and there is, obviously there was a crime, Charlie Kirk being murdered. Was there a lie or false information about that? Pretty much, right? I think we can all agree that Jimmy Kimmel's labeling of the situation was dishonest.
Yeah, and I'd point out real quick that even though I'm not really coming to his defense, but I did want to point out that the verbatim quote that he made could be argued that he wasn't necessarily saying that. I want to point out he didn't argue that he wasn't saying that. So, there you go.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then, so if there's the public harm thing, which could be, as per the FCC rules, there, it could be something that could lead to some kind of unrest or violence or things. Now, we've seen that the U.S. is a tinderbox about certain things over, like somebody dying. We've seen this in 2020. The whole country went up in flames. Now, so was there a chance that lying about the murder of somebody could cause unrest? Absolutely. Unless the very people who are likely going to sue Donald Trump admit that political violence and unrest and rioting only comes from the political left. Unless they're willing to admit that in court, I don't see how they really have a case on it. Because otherwise they'd have to admit that, well, yes, but the right wouldn't do it. They'd have to admit that. Otherwise, there is a risk of public harm. And so that is why Brendan Carr would have reached out and spoke. Now, I disagree that he should have done it public. I think that was a terrible, terrible move. I think that was just such a bad mistake. But did he have the responsibility under, and you can agree or disagree with the regulations for the FCC, but did he have responsibility under the current regulations of the FCC to at least notify ABC that, hey, as he said, we're going to have to do some work if you don't do something about this? The answer to that is clearly yes, right?
I agree. Well, and like you said, that it looks like Kimmel was going to double down.
Yeah. We're going to carry on talking about this and the No Pact after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.